Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. So what did you make of the governor's list of special session agenda items today? Any surprises?
No, not really. In politics, there aren't too many surprises these days. It is a list of many items that we took up in the regular that did not get done. That's not uncommon. Of course, there were some priority pieces of legislation, emergency items from the governor that did not pass, and so I knew we were going to come back for those. And there were some items that currently one, for instance, that the governor vetoed with a opportunity and details on how to fix what he thought was a problem in the bill to where we can bring it back and get it signed by him. So not really surprises there. And also there have been some federal decisions since then to allow us to use some dollars that we did not know were available to us for tax relief, for instance. That's happened since session. So I'm not surprised we're coming back and finishing up some items that the governor found as a priority.
On that appropriations, are you referring, that's separate from the COVID relief dollars, or is that the COVID relief dollar money?
It's COVID relief dollars that now can be used per a judicial decision that now can be used for tax relief that we originally thought we could not use those monies for that. And of course, the comptroller just also revised his BRE, his estimate for what we have to work with this session, up several $billions because the Texas economy has come roaring back. So now we have money that we didn't know was available on May 31st for, say, property tax relief or border security or whatever, or cybersecurity or CPS, salary increases, which is something else that is now on the call. So, yeah, I mean, there's been changes. A lot of new information has come to light since Sine Die, and it's one of the reasons that particular item or items are on the call.
So let me ask you, I mean, you've got 30 days. Do you think you're going to be able to get all these done?
We're going to try. We're going to get as much as done here in the House as the House members want to get done. A lot of this is going to be the will of the House, just like going in the last session. The Speaker's office was very focused on a budget that had a very large deficit, redistricting, and of course, a month later, Winter Storm Uri came through and decimated our electrical grid. And so the Speaker's office was really, laser focused on those issues along with criminal justice reform and healthcare reform. That was really what we pushed last session here in this office. And the other items that became law were because members worked hard on them and they had the votes on the floor. And I see a lot of that occurring again this special session. There'll be issues again like CPS or whether it's border security or it's the dating violence bill that I brought up that passed out of here. Those members are going to work the committee process, an open and fair process that's going to have public debate and testimony, and then we'll bring it to the House floor and see where the votes lie. But that's the beauty of the Texas House. It's the people's house, and we're the closest to people, and it's reflective of the work that leaves this chamber.
Will there be any particular order in which these bills are taken up? And the reason I ask is because the Democrats want Article 10 funding taken up first. And so what's your thought on that? I've seen Republicans comment that should be last to have maximum leverage to make sure the Democrats don't walk out.
Well, I can tell you, I know for a fact that the election integrity bill and the bail reform bill, which were emergency items from the governor, I expect those to be referred in committee soon, along with the Article 10, mainly because we need to look at that as through budget certification. The comptroller needs as much time as he can to certify that by September 1st. But that doesn't mean we won't get other items done. There are items, again, on the call that I believe my Democratic colleagues should be very focused on as well. Property tax relief, it impacts every district in this state. CPS reform, we're seeing children now for the first time post-COVID. We're having these agents, these CPS workers go out into the home, do home visits, and seeing the conditions these children are in for the first time in a year. And we're seeing, in some areas of the state, 600% increase in child removals, where they're sleeping in CPS offices. It's shameful, it's unacceptable, and I need all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on the House floor taking up these issues. These are real issues impacting all Texans.
Does that include the Dallas-Fort Worth area in which these youngsters are in CPS offices?
Absolutely. It's called Operation Child Watch, and it's happening all across the state of Texas. It's happening in Southeast Texas. It's happening in Houston. I've talked to Houston colleagues. And I know it's happening in the San Antonio, Central Texas area. I'm sure it's happening in the DFW area as well.
You mentioned the election integrity bill. What do you want to see in this bill?
The House, I thought, passed a very respectful, impactful bill off the House floor that dealt with how elections were conducted. We were not focusing on the voter, and there was no voter suppression in Senate Bill 7 as it left the Texas House, in my opinion. And we want a uniform election code that is applied fairly throughout the state of Texas. We don't prosecute under 254 penal codes. I don't think we should conduct elections differently in 254 counties. If you want to change election law, you come to this building and you change election law. And so COVID was an excuse, an opportunity for counties to try unique ways in which to conduct elections. But I think if you want to make those permanent, you come here and you change the election code.
I mean, as you know, Democrats have voiced their concerns about, time limitations, starting at 1 p.m. on Sunday, whether people with disabilities are going to have, more impairments as far as, I need to vote through mail, or, I need assistance at the ballot polling location, and they have to, come in with a note from a doctor, et cetera. Poll watchers who can record people. I mean, those are the concerns that I've read and heard about.
Sure, and I understand that. And again, in the House version, there was no recording of voters. That was not in there. And I didn't agree with the 1 p.m. And now no one agrees with the 1 p.m. We all agreed it should be 11 a.m. or the full 7 hours, which is what the code allows for in counties over 100,000. So there's already agreement in both the Senate and the House chambers as to those provisions not being in the language about overturning elections of a preponderance of evidence of a judge. That has been agreed to by both chambers not to be in the bill. So I think we're getting closer and closer to an agreement in both chambers on something that we can be proud of and call it true voter integrity, a few voter integrity bill.
So there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes discussion among lawmakers.
Well, I think it's been very open. I think you've seen social media statements by various House and Senate members who were involved in the process the last cycle that will be involved in this special, saying that those provisions will not be in either version. And I think when we file this bill here in the House, maybe today or tomorrow, you will not see those provisions in there.
Okay. And so let's talk about border security, because if I'm not mistaken, the legislature increased the amount of money spent in the biennium from $800 million to, I've seen three different versions, $1 billion, $1.1 billion, and $1.2 billion.
Sure. I believe it was 1.1 is the number I've heard.
And so how much more is the governor looking for? And how much legislative oversight will there be of the state's plan, the governor's plan to build this wall?
Sure, and the governor's proclamation just came out today, and I've not had an opportunity to read in detail his charge dealing with the border monies that he wants, added in this special. I did talk to him last night, as I was driving up to Austin to get here for this special session. And my understanding is those are grants to local law enforcement, to local sheriff's departments for their infrastructure, for their man hours. What we did here in Texas dealt with the Texas Department of Public Safety and the game wardens and their needs, whether it be overtime, whether it be drones, whether it be vehicles, and their infrastructure. So what the governor, in my understanding, is focusing on is actually the local governments and what their needs are internally for the next year or so. So that will be grant requests coming from them with oversight here at the Capitol within the governor's office, because it's like any other grant. I mean, you have to cross your T's and dot your I's, or the state can obviously audit you for how you spend those money. So this is an existing program that's been around. I think he's just asking for additional resources.
Let me ask you about the Democrats also asked you in this letter that they sent last week to defend the House. How do you defend the House, so to speak, with regards to Article 10 funding, and at the same time not getting Governor Abbott's crosshairs?
Well, the letter, and I agree, I have an open door policy. Those members could have come in and sat down and discussed any element of that letter. but I do appreciate them sending it to me. I appreciate the dialogue. I can tell you many of the items in that letter is standard operating procedure here in the House. We have open debates on the House floor. We have committee hearings where the public is allowed to come. We didn't require COVID testing. You could come in and testify this session in the House. We did not restrict the media from coming in to House committee hearings and reporting on what we're doing. So many of those elements of that particular letter, we're already doing. And there's another aspect in that letter where they defended SB 7 and said, this is a bill that was highly, debated and negotiated, and this should be the starting point for debate. So I'm glad to see that they're endorsing the House's version of Senate Bill 7 in that letter. But Article 10, the Article 10 funding, as a former staffer, I understand what it's like to live in Austin, Texas, and how expensive it is to raise a family here and pay your taxes. But the governor was looking to get the legislature's attention, and I think he got the legislature's attention, and we have until September 1st to pass Article 10. We will pass Article 10 along with several other items on the call. So, I hope my Democratic colleagues understand that, there's a lot of stuff on this call we need to do, and including election integrity, including Article 10.
What will you do to keep them from walking out? Because they said that's something that they are still considering.
Well, they said everything's on the table. So as a speaker, everything's on the table. And again, there are some things on the call specifically that I would hope they would want to address. I saw letters from my Democratic colleagues asking for CPS assistance, financial assistance for the Child Protective Services and for the foster care system, and that's on the call now. There were letters from my Democratic colleagues asking for property tax relief, and that is on the call. So there's plenty of opportunities for them to serve their constituents and fight for what they believe in. So I hope they show up here in the Texas Capitol and do both. I'm ready to get to work tomorrow at 10 a.m., and I'm fairly certain that they're going to be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. to get to work too.
My last question to you is, among your options, does that include, are you considering locking the doors, keeping them from walking out, and sending troopers out to get them if not?
It's a legislative strategy that I'm not really willing to discuss or share. I would have that discussion with them as well if they want to talk about what my options are. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to show up here and talk about many of the items on the governor's call, again, including some of their items that they wanted to see included. And I don't think the governor's finished. There's an opportunity for him to add more items in the coming weeks, as many governors have done in the past. And so, we all take an oath to represent our constituents, and whether you like it or not, a special session is something that we have to show up for as well.
Did the governor give you a preview of sorts that he's thinking of adding more?
No, it's just that's happened in the past, and I can only assume that it would happen in the future. So I would again, there's no surprises in politics, and that wouldn't surprise me if something else were to be added to the call.
Speaker Dade Phelan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.